Hey, welcome to First Stop Indy, presented by EOS Fitness. I am now joined by Field Yates, who's on the ground there in downtown Indy. Field, thank you so much for joining me. And I guess we'll just get right into it. Looking at your latest mock drafts, and a lot of surprises, no surprises. Who you got the Raiders going with at number one?
Yeah, probably the easiest pick that I made. Maybe the only easy pick in the 2026 mock draft was Fernando Mendoza, the quarterback from Indiana, who I'm trying to think of the last time I saw a mock draft that didn't have Fernando going to the Raiders. It's been quite some time, and I'm trying to reinforce one point throughout this process, which is that this is not a case of a quarterback being pushed up the board because a team drafting number one overall has a need at quarterback. I think this is the best player in the draft in Fernando Mendoza and one of the top quarterback prospects over the past 3 years. It was a remarkable season this past year for Mendoza in Indiana. Incredibly steady. Didn't really see much in the way of a game that made you say to yourself, are we certain this guy has the goods to be a starting quarterback in the NFL? The traits are impressive. The human is even more impressive. So while I know the Raiders publicly have stopped short of saying anything of the nature or to the effect of we're drafting Fernando Mendoza number one overall, we still have 2 months until that actual day comes. Certainly all signs point in that direction.
Field, when it comes to Fernando, like you mentioned, he checks all these boxes and everything as far as the intangibles go, right? And the tangibles, the measurables and things like that. How much of a fit is it then with what Clint Kubiak is bringing in as a first-time ever head coach, as the play caller, as his offensive scheme he imparts with potentially Fernando Mendoza being his quarterback?
Yeah, we love when a plan comes together, right? And throughout the fall, one of the players that are the player that I use most often as my comp for Fernando Mendoza was Sam Darnold. Others have used Matt Ryan or players beyond those two, but I've used Sam as a comp for Fernando many times. And the reasons why is both of these players, first of all, they have full field accuracy. Fernando has a stronger arm than Sam, but both of them have plenty of arm strength as well. Fernando did not play a ton under play action. As a matter of fact, under center this past year. Just 3% of his snaps at Indiana came from under center during this 2025 into 2026 season. But there are some elements of hard play action passing that Fernando, I think, can master at the NFL level that Sam has as well. So to me, it's a perfect fit with Clint Kubiak's scheme. I don't think that's the only reason why you'll hire a man like Clint Kubiak as your head coach. He certainly has more to offer than just the system that he brings, but it was awfully convenient for those that compared him, like myself, to Sam Darnold to see why this match made a lot of sense. So I'm excited to see how these two most likely mesh together, and I'm excited to see how this franchise as a whole, obviously looking to avoid being where they have been in recent seasons, specifically this past year. It's nice to build this thing organically, a timeline with, a first-time and young head coach. Clint, of course, turned 39 shortly after he got the job in Las Vegas, and a quarterback who at 23 years old will be amongst the youngest starting quarterbacks in the NFL next year. It's a chance to kind of grow this thing the way that I do believe John Spytek wants to build a roster, which is draft, develop, and reinvest. A chance to do that now with a rookie quarterback and a rookie head coach.
I'd say what's interesting, too, Field, is talking to John Spytek earlier in the week as the Combine began, was he wasn't really – he said he wasn't a fan either of throwing a young quarterback out there so that he would get killed. Now, obviously, that's not the end goal of anybody. You want to put them in a position to succeed. They've got to address the offensive line, things like that. What else is going to make it a good fit for Fernando?
Yeah, so I think the offensive line is something to note. Is something to note there, where Fernando was much better in terms of sack awareness and just sort of pocket awareness in general this past season. He cut his sacks in just about half this past year compared to his final season at Cal. Now, it's a different offensive line, different offensive system, more talent. At Cal, he played with a couple of players, and Jaden Ott and Jack Endries, who ended up transferring, like Fernando, after the 2024 season that will get drafted. Indiana had a bunch of guys that will be taken either this year or in the coming years. But I thought the pocket awareness, the decisiveness was improved. But for the offensive line, it's going to take some investments. Colson Miller, who I believe John went on the record saying this past week or at some point during this week, hey, the offensive line is kind of open for business other than Colton Miller being our left tackle. It's going to be identifying more talent, but also guys that fit how I think Clint Kubiak wants to play. Premium on athletic ability, guys who can move well in space, and this likely heavy zone running scheme. But Fernando, I think the fit beyond what we have seen with some of the stuff on the field is that, I get it. He's coming from a 16-0 team to a team that has the first pick in the draft. Yeah. But he played at Cal when things weren't great, right? And he was a floor raiser for Cal. Cal is a program that, moving to the ACC, they face some challenges, both the entire college football landscape amongst, besides the traditional powerhouses, has dealt with the reality of NIL and the transfer portal. Fernando helped raise the floor of Cal quite a bit, and he saw what it was like to play under more duress a couple of seasons ago. And while the sack number, I took the second most sacks in the FBS 2 seasons ago behind only Shedeur Sanders, that number was one area that needed to improve. I thought his decision-making overall under duress was solid enough already at Cal. It improved this past year at Indiana, and as a young quarterback in the NFL, you're going to face some challenges that no matter how well you played in college, you haven't seen before. It's like facing a pitcher for the first time that's got some nasty stuff. That's the reality of being a young QB in this league.
Beyond that, too, Field, when you talk about Fernando, there's some parallels there with Clint Kubiak in terms of bouncing around a little bit. I mean, this is going to be the 6th different spot for Clint in 6 straight years. And
in 6 years.
Yeah, and Fernando, he's from Miami, went all the way across country to Cal, then went to Indiana, and now he's coming into the NFL. What are some of the things then from Fernando's perspective that he should be excited about in joining potentially, again, I got to keep saying potentially joining the Raiders?
Yeah, first of all, I hope Clint Kubiak was renting all those years,
exactly.
Especially in this market with the interest rates where they are. Yeah, so hopefully he and now he can settle in, which is a great feeling for him.
Yeah.
But the exciting part for Fernando is you have a head coach that's coming off of a dominant Super Bowl season and was just brilliant this past year, taking Sam Darnold to the heights that he did and maximizing some of the players within that offense, specifically Jackson Smith and Jigba. But there's it's tough after this past season to say that everything is hunky-dory. That's not how the NFL works. But you've got a running back who, despite some struggles with the offensive line last year, showed some real flashes of brilliance. You have arguably the best tight end in the NFL in Brock Bowers, and lots of resources this offseason. We are very understandably focused on the first pick in the draft and will be until it's actually made official on April 23rd. But the Raiders got a lot of resources, including a pick at the beginning portion of the second round as well. And this is a class where I don't think that, picks 10 through 20 this year stack up to where you might normally see them. A lot of depth in this class. So the draft is far from over, and I think the Raiders can continue to build out this roster beyond just that first pick. And I'll say it, and this is maybe me just being stuck on my priors, but I still believe wholeheartedly that Jack Bech is ready to be an excellent player in the NFL. So while the wide receiver room needs some addressing, I think there's some pieces there that will look a little bit different this year with a better offensive system in place.
Yeah, and there's a reason that the Raiders used the second-round draft pick on him last year anyway. At least the same GM that's in place did that. Hey, my last football-based question for you then is this. Loyalty is a big theme when it comes to Clint Kubiak and his staff. 5 of his coaches that he's hired as assistants had worked together or worked with him or for him previously. What does that say about the type of atmosphere that he's trying to foster here in his first year as a head coach for himself?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And, Clint obviously knows this business better than most 39-year-olds do, having grown up around it with his father. And, his brothers are both working in the world of football as well, obviously. His brother Clay is with the Niners as their offensive coordinator, and his brother Klein is with the Cowboys. It's sort of a hybrid role down there. So he knows how difficult it can be on a personal level, right? I mean, obviously, when you have a lot of success and you win a Super Bowl like his dad does, or did, I should say, and now Clint has himself as an assistant coach, you get to enjoy some of the splendors of coaching. But there's some real rigors as well. And those that have chosen to come with him to Las Vegas, leaving a great spot. They are in Seattle, position to be good for a long time. And it speaks to, I think, what Clint means to those individuals that joined him or will be joining him in Las Vegas. And I can't wait to see it on the field.
I tell you what else I can't wait to see field is for myself, when I use things in my ears, I either use the big headphones or the Beats by Dre that hook around my ears. Where are your AirPods exactly? And I don't mean to offend any sponsors or potential sponsors. Where are your AirPods? I know your resolution.
I now have 2 pairs, Paul. Okay. Is my goal to not lose them this year. went horribly. I lost my first pair of 2016 on February 17th. I have that documented now in social media. But I found them 8 days later in a pair of jeans that I apparently hadn't worn in 8 days. So now I've got 2 pairs. So the joke is on Apple, because when I lose my next pair, I'm not giving them more business because I got one sitting there in the cradle.
Absolutely. Just make sure the software is updated. Field, thank you so much, man. It's been too long.
Thanks, PG. Good to see you, man.
Take care.